Wet Leg is an indie rock band that formed in Isle of Wight, England. They are from the UK, and I don't know many bands that came from Isle of Wight, to be honest. My knowledge of Isle of Wight bands is not very strong. But what I do know is that these guys have just dropped their debut album on Domino Records and have kind of rocketed into a bit of a big indie band, I would say. Suddenly out of nowhere, it feels like everyone seems to be talking about these guys, and given that I've listened to the album a few times now, I think it's for pretty good reason. They seem to be a nice, refreshing little rock band in the world of indie music, and I think the approach to writing and lyrics and the sense of humour that they tackle every track with gives them the edge over your average typical run-of-the-mill indie band. I've seen some claims here and there about that they are the dreaded industry plant. They're an industry plant. I don't know if there's any truth to that at all. I really don't know. They may have just gotten popular through the fact that their music has started to go a bit viral or something like that. I don't really know. I'm just here to talk about the quality of the music, and I'm happy to say that I like this. I will say I tend to be critical of these kinds of indie pop groups that pop up, particularly with kind of like non-emotive singers that kind of sing in one note, and you know, the songs don't really captivate me and the music is just really dull to listen to. That's the kind of genre I feel like I've piled a lot of these kinds of artists into over the years, over the past couple of years particularly. But Wet Leg, I think, have they've not fallen into that. Chaise Longue is a track that immediately brings the sense of humour to the table, really. For me, I think the line where she asks, "Would you like us to assign someone to butter your muffin?" That is quite the question you'd get from a Starbucks waiter, isn't it? Is your muffin buttered? The important questions are being asked. And the big D that's being mentioned at the start of the track, that's obviously a donut. They're talking about donuts and muffins, guys. Don't be so dirty-minded, it's obvious what they're speaking about. It has a hella catchy refrain, as does many of the tracks as well, but I think Angelica is an interesting moment because the chorus on this one is so muted and the instrumentation surrounding the vocals is so distorted and heavy, and yet you can barely hear the vocals, and yet it really works, which is something I would usually say is a bit of a no-go for choruses. Usually you want a bit more of a striking chorus, but this track here I think does a really good job of kind of flipping that on its head. And apparently Angelica is a bit of a cheeky girl. She brings ray guns and lasagna to the table. What a naughty, silly girl. A lot of this album, in terms of the lyrics, tends to be tackling, I guess, relationships, and sort of the singer ends up like holding a mirror to the man she's talking about and kind of getting them to reflect on their behaviours and their actions and things like that. Quite an interesting approach to the writing on this album. It's not done in a bitter way, although at times I think bitterness does seep through, but I think the track Convincing, for example, is quite a good sort of slap of reality in the face. You know, convincing yourself this is all fine when it's really not. I thought the track Loving You was relatively sweet and endearing, sort of talking about saying how you want to take things a step further with someone, and then at the end of the track she's talking about how actually she just wants him to sort of choke because she just kind of like hates the fact that he's got a girlfriend. I was like, what? Piece of shit, as sarcastic as hell as well in the tone and the delivery and the lyrics. What does she say? She says, alright, you're a good guy, alright, whatever helps you sleep at night. Just kind of like poking at this guy who seems to think he's not bad and he's all good. And she's just kind of poking at that in the lyrics. Is pretty funny. I like the sense of humour that's just constantly lingering through this album. It just gives the tracks an edge, and they do it in a funny way as well. It's not like really cringy, unfunny humour. I don't think there's anything worse than that. I guess humour generally is subjective, but I think they do tackle it in a different way to your average band. Your Mum is probably the funniest and possibly best track on the album for me. The whole loudest scream section I find quite amusing as well. No idea why that's even there, but it's just fun that it is. And then just kind of throughout the song, just kind of asking the guy you know, do you feel sorry for your mum because this is the way you've turned out? It's so harsh. So harsh to ask a question like that, man. But god damn, I like the idea of just kind of bringing someone's mum into the situation of like, this is how you've turned out. What does your mum think? I really like that, and once again they sell it in such a good way too. I really like how Sydney Gish this song sounds as well. For the people that are in the know, Sydney Gish drops some really good indie pop music, by the way, and Sin Triangle is such a great jam, and this track is the closest to a Sin Triangle I've heard since that track dropped. And I think that song's fantastic. I didn't talk about it on the channel at the time. It blew past me and I didn't know much about it. But once I'd heard it years after the song come out, I found it to be such a great indie tune. This is the closest to that I've heard since that song. So yeah, we're talking quite a few years at this point, and that is high praise because I think Sydney Gish is really fun. Just an all-round smash hit of a track, really. Just funny lyrically. It could be one of my favourite songs of the year by the end of the year. I could see that for sure. I do think as well, I Don't Want to Go Out kind of brings in a bit of Man Who Sold the World in the guitar as well. There's definitely some influences coming through on this album. Some past artists have definitely influenced this style of music for sure. They bring their own ideas to the table, they put their own spin on it, and it's great. The only track I'd say that they don't really do that for is Supermarket, which is just a really typical generic high song. Not really intrigued by this one at all, just feels like any old artist could make a song like this. Lyrically, it's not really that funny either. And I guess some other moments on the album probably could do with being a bit more distinct musically, because I think they've nailed down a lot of the ideas generally. A lot of the, I guess, personality is already seeping through really well. The lyrical approaches are fun and, you know, really humorous. But I would say it probably could be a bit more original in the music department in places, but not the harshest critique in the world. I guess it's hard to really make an album like this stand out musically generally anyway, but even still, I think the final track, Too Late Now, is pretty solid as well. I think it's good when it starts slow, but when it starts like speed up and kick in, I think that's the best part of the track once it really, you know, elevates to that next level. So yeah, overall a good album, really good debut, an impressive one that I thought was decent on first listen, but once I started to pick up on a lot of the lyrics and focused on what they were saying, it ended up being a better album. So I enjoyed this quite a bit. Like I say, could be more original in places musically, certainly, but if they were to make a full album of tracks like Your Mum, I think I'd probably be giving this like an 8 or a 9. But for now, I think for a debut, I think it's really good, and I'm going to go 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 is high praise for me. So yes, thank you as always for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have given this a listen. Tell me what you think. Subscribe if you have not already. Check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. And have a good day. Goodbye.